2024 has changed climbing on Mount Everest forever. Here's what's happened on the world's tallest mountain. From drones to poop to global warming, the Everest experience has changed drastically. As always, viewer discretion is advised. Usually, when you want to summit Everest, it goes something like this. First, you arrive at base camp, where you spend several weeks acclimatizing to the altitude. You'll make a few preliminary climbs to camps at higher elevations, returning to base camp in between to rest and prepare your body for the thinning air. Then, when a suitable weather window opens, you make your push for the summit. This year, however, local authorities introduced new rules trying to solve some of the mountain's long-standing issues. You see, Mount Everest has an issue. It's becoming too crowded, and with crowds come problems, such as trash, waste, and safety hazards. In 2023, over 478 permits were issued to prospective climbers, all of who came along with their guides or Sherpas, putting the number of 1,200 people on the mountain, a record number that led to truly uncomfortable climbing. This crowd, in addition to things like record-breaking avalanches and mountains of waste and litter left on the mountain's storied slopes, put a major strain on the Everest experience. And so, the Nepali government, in an attempt to deal with growing concerns about safety, environmental problems, and local economic challenges, introduced a series of bold, new regulations to transform the Everest climbing experience for good. Gone are the days when base camp buzzed with the lively ambiance of cafes, bars, and other commercial businesses that provided comfort and luxury. The government, wanting to sharpen the focus on climbing, banned all business ventures at the camp. This move was, as one outlet put it, aimed to cut down on distractions and maintain the solemnity and seriousness of the Everest expeditions. Doing this wasn't just about reducing noise or clutter alone, though. It was a strategic decision to preserve the integrity of the climbing experience, ensuring that climbers and crews are focused solely on the mountain and their safety, rather than being tempted by the comforts of a pseudo-tourist hub that Everest is slowly turning to. Speaking of the commercialization of Mount Everest, even the entrance to base camp itself in 2024 turned into a huge controversy when the Nepali government made a huge billboard sign and stuck it in front of the massive rock that has welcomed climbers and always been the landmark symbol of reaching base camp. I trekked to Everest Base Camp in March of 2024, and I would agree that seeing a very commercialized sign sitting at the base of Mount Everest felt pretty weird. Many climbers felt this sign was an even bigger indicator that Mount Everest has lost its wild, untamed purity and become just another attraction for paying tourists. There's also always been tension in the Everest climbing community over the years about the difference in attitude to summiting Everest between Sherpas, the ethnic Nepalese tribesmen native to the Himalayas, who act as local guides, and the climbers themselves. As time and technology have moved forward, climbers have often displayed a more cavalier attitude to the dangers of the mountain, and many experienced mountain guides had just about had it. For example, Mingma Gyalji Sherpa, a leading figure in the Everest climbing community, noted that the combination of harsh weather and careless attitudes among climbers significantly contributed to the high number of deaths in 2023. Many climbers, particularly those from abroad, were overly eager to reach the summit, often setting out without proper supplies or adequate preparation. In response, the Nepali government introduced new regulations to both prevent and manage these conflicts more effectively. First, all climbers attempting to summit Mount Everest are now required to carry electronic tracking chips. These chips are supposed to be able to help search and rescue attempts. While this seems like a no-brainer, a closer look makes this a puzzling new rule. These required reflectors are often used in avalanche incidents for body recovery, but they require a bulky detector that is often carried via helicopter. And the impracticalities of this new required chip don't stop there. These tracking chips don't allow ground-based searches, and on Everest, most rescue and recovery missions are above 23,000 feet, where helicopters can't fly, meaning the detectors can't be carried or used. An expert weighed in on this, and said his company has tested all manner of sensors, trackers, and even vital sign monitors on Everest, and says each one comes with its limitations, but none so much as Reco reflectors, which became the 2024 tracking chip of choice. Most climbers on Everest who get lost do so on the summit ridge, far beyond the possibility of a Reco-guided recovery. A better solution to the problem of climbers getting lost on the mountain would be that their guides do not leave them alone, the expert commented. Well, that makes sense to me. Don't leave your climbers alone on Mount Everest. These regulations also required that all expeditions must employ local porters and yaks for equipment transportation. So they forbade the use of helicopters to ferry gear to and from Everest Base Camp. Instead, all tents, climbing gear, and personnel would need to be transported solely by yaks. The rule's intention was to not only preserve nature and reduce helicopter traffic in the region, but to support the fading cultural practice and industry of yak herding. But while this supports the local economy and ensures that the benefits of the climbing industry remain within the local community, it's also a huge problem to deny helicopter transport of goods to base camp because there's just not enough yaks to meet demand. In other words, the yak supply chain is lacking. Speaking of yaks, here's my vote for 2024 Yak of the Year from my base camp trip. But in a bit of a head-scratcher, while the Nepalese government has wanted to emphasize the purity of the mountain, not relying on helicopters and focusing on local porters and yaks, they have also been experimenting with advanced technologies to enhance safety and efficiency. One significant breakthrough has been the 2024 introduction of drone technology for supply and waste management higher up on the mountain. The project involved using a new drone called a DJI Flycart 30, a machine capable of carrying substantial payloads even at extreme altitudes and environmental conditions. The drone successfully flew past the south slope of Mount Everest at 21,654 feet, carrying a 33-pound load of oxygen canisters. During the test run, 3 oxygen bottles and additional supplies were transported from Everest Base Camp to Camp 1, with trash being carried back down on the return flight, showcasing the drone's capability for both supply delivery, as well as addressing the long-standing issue of trash accumulation on the mountain. The introduction of drones could significantly reduce the risks Sherpa guides face, especially in hazardous areas like the Khumbu icefall, a notorious section of the route where Sherpas traditionally make over 30 crossings in a season. Mingmagelje Sherpa, a mountain guide involved in the trials, shared his experience. Using drones has significantly reduced the time and risk associated with navigating through the treacherous Khumbu icefall. Previously, we had to make multiple high-risk trips through this area, which has always been one of the most dangerous segments of the climb. Last year, I lost 3 Sherpas. If we're not lucky, if our time is not right, we lose our life there. Now, with the reliable assistance of drones, we can ensure that essential supplies reach high-altitude camps while minimizing the danger to human life. Now, while drones are cool and do mark a significant leap forward in mountaineering logistics, perhaps the most groundbreaking of the new rules introduced on Everest relates to waste management. This 2024 regulation, aimed at preserving the pristine environment of the world's highest peak, requires every climber and expedition to remove all their waste from the mountain, including human waste. Yes, we're talking about poop. Climbers ascending Mount Everest are now required to collect their poo in specially provided doggy bags, or wag bags, and carry at least 20 pounds of their waste back to base camp. Each person is given 3 bags to reuse throughout their climb, ensuring that they pack out everything they pack in. The decision comes in response to years of litter problems on Everest, with the mountain slopes increasingly covered in poop as adventure tourism booms. According to the Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee's 2022 report, climbers generated over 35,273 pounds of poop in the spring of 2022 alone. That is, well, a lot of poop. And that's not to mention all the litter besides poop. Climbers on Everest are often too focused on survival to worry about tidying up. As they ascend, They shed weight by dumping everything from empty oxygen bottles to shredded tents. Over the years, these discarded items have accumulated, turning the slopes of Everest into an alpine junkyard. The trash problem on Everest is so severe that climbers have dubbed it the world's highest garbage dump. Among the debris, you can find an assortment of peculiar items that might make you chuckle. There are discarded prayer flags, abandoned climbing gear, and even the occasional stuffed animal. It's like a bizarre treasure hunt, but instead of gold, you're finding soggy boots and broken camp stoves. 2024's new regulations also brought a huge initiative. The Nepal Army, in collaboration with local authorities, is leading a significant cleanup campaign as part of the Clean Himalaya Campaign 2024. This year, they aim to remove 10 metric tons of garbage and retrieve up to 5 fallen climbers from Everest and nearby peaks like Mount Lhotse and Mount Nuptse. This extensive cleanup involves trained Army personnel and experienced Sherpas working to clear waste from a base camp up to higher altitudes. Despite these efforts, Mount Everest remains littered with trash, with estimates suggesting that more than 140,000 tons of waste, including 3 tons of human excrement, are scattered across its slopes. But it's not just the environmental issues that have changed in 2024. There's also global warming problems. Mount Everest is melting, guys, and it's melting much faster than you can imagine. Researchers have been sounding the alarm for years, and now we're seeing the effects in real time. The ice that has shrouded Everest for millennia is retreating at an alarming rate, revealing rocks and exposing routes that were once safely encased in snow and ice. For example, a 2019 study showed that ice, which took around 2,000 years to form on Mount Everest's higher glacier, the South Col Glacier, has melted in around 25 years, meaning it has thinned out approximately 80 times faster than it formed. And this startling rate of loss has been directly correlated to the accelerated impact of climate change on high-altitude environments like Mount Everest. As the glacier melts, these movements become more unpredictable. The warmer temperatures cause the ice to weaken and break more frequently, which increases the risk of ice collapses. And nowhere is this more dangerous than in the treacherous grasp of the Khumbu icefall, one of Everest's deadliest stretches. Even for the most prepared climbers, the icefall represents a formidable challenge, and it was a hurdle that only got worse in 2024. The Khumbu icefall is located just above Everest Base Camp and serves as the first major obstacle for climbers on the South Col route to the summit. It is quite infamously known as one of the most dangerous parts of the Everest climb. This stretch of the mountain is called an icefall because it functions like a river of ice, constantly moving and shifting. This movement is driven by the slow descent of the Khumbu Glacier as it moves down the mountain, creating a dynamic and unstable ice structure. It's a treacherous maze of crevasses that can stretch over 300 feet deep and house-sized ice structures that can break free unexpectedly. Crossing the Khumbu icefall involves crossing ladders laid over cracks and crevasses that can be up to hundreds of feet deep. The Khumbu icefall patch is considered so dangerous that only a specialized team of Sherpas, known as the icefall doctors, dares to navigate and maintain it. This highly skilled group is tasked with the formidable job of carving out a viable route through the icefall each climbing season. Their work is critical, as they lay down ladders and ropes over deep crevasses and alongside unstable ice towers that could collapse at any moment. In 2024, the challenges in the icefall were compounded by a combination of factors directly linked to climate change. The primary issue was the accelerated melting of the glacier. As global temperatures rise, glaciers like Khumbu melt faster, leading to an increase in the number and size of crevasses and the instability of massive ice towers known as seracs. These seracs can stand as tall as houses and are prone to collapse without warning, triggering deadly avalanches, like the one that killed 3 Sherpas last year. The season's start was notably delayed because the icefall doctors faced significant difficulties creating a safe path for climbers. In fact, climbing it almost never took off. First, there was insufficient winter snowfall, which typically helps stabilize the glacier by compacting and hardening the snow and ice. This lack of snowfall left the ice looser and more fragmented than usual, making it particularly challenging to establish and maintain a stable path through the icefall. This shortfall in snow was compounded by higher than average temperatures, which accelerated the melting of the Khumbu Glacier. The warmer weather caused the ice to become more mobile and unpredictable, increasing the risk of serac falls and the widening of crevasses. These conditions created a highly unstable environment, fraught with new and unpredictable hazards that posed significant challenges to even the most experienced climbers and route setters. Trusted routes proved impassable, as the route that the icefall doctors had hoped to open led to a dead end. Twice. And while this delay caused some grumbling at base camp, no one was going to take the risk of entering the Khumbu icefall before it was deemed safe. And I mean, why would they? When it was obvious even the most experienced Sherpas on the mountain were unsure what would happen next. No point rushing to your death, right? So, despite the initial frustration and eagerness to push forward, the collective consensus was to wait for the green light from the icefall doctors, which they later got on April 17th, 10 days later than expected. Once the news came in, the crowd of climbers picked up their equipment and the race to Everest began. Notice how I use this word crowd? Yeah, that's not a coincidence. It's the perfect term to capture the increasing number of climbers flocking to Everest each year, turning a phenomenon that was once a solitary pursuit of mountaineering into something resembling a bustling highway during peak season. Last year, the government issued a disastrous number of permits, 487, which many pointed to as a contributing factor to the numerous incidents on the mountain. This year, the number of permits has been reduced to 388, but even that much remains a crowd. Even with the reduced number of climbers, the narrow pathways and limited optimal weather windows create bottlenecks, particularly at higher camps and crucial segments like the Khumbu Icefall and the Hillary Step. These bottlenecks can lead to dangerous delays, increased exposure to harsh conditions in the death zone, and a higher risk of altitude sickness, all of which can turn fatal. Overcrowding also complicates rescue operations. In emergencies, every second counts, and the presence of too many climbers can hinder the swift movement of rescue teams. The environmental impact cannot be overlooked. More climbers mean more waste, more wear on the mountain's fragile trails, and a greater cumulative impact on the local ecology. But the most dangerous consequence of overcrowding is dramatically illustrated in a chilling example from this year's climbing season. Look, words alone here won't do the trick. Let me just show you the video. See that? That's the crowded summit ridge just moments before a cornice collapsed, resulting in a harrowing incident in which 2 climbers plunged to their deaths. The video vividly captures the dangerous conditions created by too many climbers trying to reach the summit at the same time, which not only increases the risk of accidents, but can also delay or complicate rescue efforts when disasters strike. Mala explained the situation in his post. The Everest summit ridge felt different than my previous experiences on the mountain, Mala wrote. There was soft snow, many cornices and rocky sections covered in snow. The weather station was even half buried in snow. After summiting, we crossed the Hillary Step. Traffic was moving slowly, then suddenly a cornice collapsed a few meters ahead of us. There was also a cornice under us. As the cornice collapsed, 4 climbers nearly perished, yet were clipped onto the rope and self-rescued. Sadly, 2 climbers are still missing. The 2 climbers missing are Daniel Paul Peterson, a 40-year-old mountaineer from the UK, and his Nepalese guide, 23-year-old Pastenji Sherpa. At this point, there is tragically no hope of finding both of them alive. The pair likely fell down the Kangchung face of the mountain when the cornice they were on broke away. 3 other climbers were rescued, but Peterson and Pastenji fell towards the Tibetan range where rescue is impossible. A witness reported, "We mobilized 6 Sherpas for the rescue, but could not retrieve them. They were swept away by the rock towards the Tibetan range," he added. Mr. Peterson was known as a fit and experienced climber. "This was his first summit with us," stated Pemba Sherpa, the manager at 8K Expedition. He was aware of everything about climbing and the challenges. He was physically fit. It's a natural disaster. Who knows what will happen in the mountains? They are unpredictable. We don't know his location. It's a steep slope and they are gone. We have called off the search operation, he said, signaling a grim resolution to a tragic event. Now, while there are certain harsh realities that come with climbing such formidable peaks, I can't quite shake off the feeling that this might not have happened in the first place if the summit hadn't been so overcrowded. And if global warming wasn't a real issue on Everest, but I don't know, I'm not a veteran Mount Everest mountain climber after all. According to sources, a rescue team led by Inga Tenji Sherpa and Pasang Sherpa of Summit Force sprang into action when the route broke at the Hillary section, managing to save other climbers caught in a critical situation. Mala's proactive actions in this chaotic scenario might also have saved many lives. We tried to traverse, but it was impossible due to the traffic on the fixed line, Mala explained in his Instagram post. Many climbers were stuck in traffic, and oxygen was running low. I was able to start breaking a new route for the descending traffic to begin moving slowly once again. Mala's third video on Instagram captures the climbers passing after he repaired the route, which is a testament to the quick thinking and resourcefulness required in such extreme conditions. But this situation highlights a recurring issue on Everest, one that can turn an already risky trip into something much more dangerous if left unattended to. But while all these new regulations to clean up Everest, preserve the Sherpa economy, and protect both climbers and Sherpas, could very well set a new standard not just for Everest, but for major climbing expeditions around the world, it still wouldn't change the dangers of climbing such a formidable peak. Everest, with its extreme altitudes, unpredictable weather, and challenging terrain, remains an inherently risky endeavor. The 2024 season started off with many professionals fearful that we would have a repeat of 2023, with over-eager climbers seeking to reach the summit as fast as possible, and nasty, avoidable tragedies. But thankfully we saw some improved, if not confusing, government regulations designed to cater more for the Sherpas, while also trying to balance safety and awareness at higher elevations. And while there were still some devastating tragedies in 2024, we're grateful to report far fewer deaths than 2023's tragic year. But the reality still remains that the allure of Everest to climbers remains supreme, with more and more people getting interested at taking a shot at climbing the highest mountain in the world. And so the question is, what's next for the king of all mountains? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay bold and live brave.